This video was released one day early for my Patreon patrons, link in the description. Hello everybody and welcome to this episode of ChatGPT Makes a Horror Game. For the sake of viewability, I am not going to do any more pre-production on screen. I will do that off screen unless something massive happens. You can kind of imagine where we're going to be going with it. And if, something lore-wise ends up being very important, I will also let you know. So don't worry, you're not being left out, but I think for viewability, we've seen enough of ChatGPT talking about lore. So if you look here, I actually have the engine open right now. And the reason that's exciting is because we're actually going to get in there and start creating things. But this is the perspective we're coming from. I am new to Unreal Engine. I have a basic understanding and ChatGPT has to do the rest. So obviously that's not the case. I would say I'm slowly becoming a more advanced user. Most stuff doesn't really scare me anymore. Not to say I know everything, to be clear. I do not, even remotely. I'm just saying I know enough to be dangerous. However, I have to dumb myself down and let ChatGPT help me out. Now, if I hit play here, you'll see that right now we have a lot of the basic stuff that is in the first person template. If we look into the first person character, we head over to the viewport here and you'll see it's literally just the first person template. We got a camera, we got our arms, and that's all we've got. Now, obviously there is some basic code already put in because if we pick this up, we do get the gun, which is so loud. The reason that's relevant is we either need to make a new first person character blueprint or strip the current one we have of these default implementations. But I'm new to the Unreal Engine. I don't know what I'm doing. Okay, ChatGPT, I just made a first person template and I'm looking for the first few steps that I should do now that pre-production is complete. Okay, I think it's important that I, in a way, correct ChatGPT here. Now, there's 100 ways to skin a cat, if not more, which means simply we can reach our goal in a lot of different ways. But as someone that has now made several games, a lot of them, listen, ever since my YouTube started exploding, for me, trust me, this is exploding, but I know that it's exploding. Anyway, a lot of people have been downloading my games off of itch.io. Trust me, those are like when I was still learning and they embarrass me. They're not that good. But anyway, now that I've really got my hands dirty, I will tell you that this is not the order that you should do this in. And I would think that most industry professionals would agree from the literature that I've read and stuff. Basically, number 5 has to happen first. To implement basic gameplay mechanics such as movement, sprinting, and interaction. And the reason for that is when you go to make a game, you need to find the fun. What does that mean? Basically, you need the minimal viable product. I think they literally call it the MVP, minimal viable product. Because you need to be able to play it. Is it fun? Because if it's not, imagine making an entire asylum. It looks amazing. You get all this stuff set up, all these ideas that you want to have happen. So you build the environment, the visual storytelling, the puzzle locations, and you get it all set up. Then you implement the basic gameplay mechanics and you're like, this sucks. This isn't even fun to do. So that is why, honestly, 5 and 6 need to come before all of that stuff. Again, this is gonna be kind of weird because I'm a beginner according to ChatGPT, and it's telling me what to do. And that's kind of the idea of the series, but I'm scared to do it how it wants me to. But I guess to be fair, that's what we should do. Sorry, I'm torn on this. I'm just gonna let it tell me. I guess we're going to create a rough map layout of the asylum and its various areas. However, remember, for your games, this has to happen first. Take it from someone that's done it. Let's create a rough map layout of the asylum and its various areas. How do I go about doing that? Okay, so even ChatGPT is kind of double dipping here. If we look at the last thing it said, which by the way, this is just teaching us how to basically make the map on paper first. But if you look here, it says, it's always a good idea to playtest the map as you go to ensure that it is balanced and provides a challenging yet fair experience for the player. you understand how unless 5 and 6 happens, we can't do that. So this is where it's important, and it's a very important lesson when it comes to AI. At least this iteration of AI. Critical thinking is still insanely important. It is one thing to have ChatGPT tell you how to do something. It is another to ask it to explain how to do something and why you're doing it. If you do something and you get to the end and it works, but you have no idea how, you have failed. Now, sometimes when you're new and you tackle a new system, even with a tutorial on YouTube, you're going to come across situations where you follow the tutorial and you're still confused. That is fine as long as you tried. But if you consistently are using AI to teach you to do things, or more or less have you do stuff to make it work, I'm not even going to use the word teach, and you get to the end and everything keeps working, but you don't know how, that is a problem. You need to be changing the questions you're asking so you can have an understanding of why you're doing the things that you're doing. Because a lot of creativity and critical thinking is going to come from understanding how the systems work and why they work together the way they do. I've seen this in real time with a lot of the people that I've taught. They get more and more ideas and become more and more creative as they learn what the tools do and why they work the way they do. Sorry for the tangent, but I think it's a very important message for anybody that's this interested in AI. So, because I'm using critical thinking, we're gonna take this last sentence and say, okay, we need to do 5 and 6 first. It wants us to implement basic gameplay mechanics such as movement, sprinting, and interaction. So I think that's what we'll do this episode. Fortunately, if we go over to our game and we hit play, you'll note that a lot of the movement is already implemented. If we hit shift though, we don't really get a sprint. So let's go ahead and add a sprint to the game. How do I add sprint to my game? Okay, it actually wants me to tackle this in a way that I don't normally do it. So we're actually gonna do it the way that it told us to. In order to make this visually possible, let me try to split my screen. This might not work, we'll see. It kinda works. Does this work? I think it works. It's not gonna work always, but it'll work for now. Okay, so it wants me to create a new variable called isSprinting in your character blueprint. Set its default value to false. So it's talking about a Boolean. We have a basic understanding of the Unreal Engine, so we can absolutely do that. Is sprinting. Okay, let's save and compile. Default value is now false. Create a new input action in your project settings called sprint. Well, we haven't done that before. So let's click on project settings and we're going to go up to the search and we're going to type in input action. So we're not finding anything. What if we just remove action and just leave input? Is there anything here called input action? Since we've never done this before, let's go ahead and ask, how do I do a new input action? I've never done that before, Mr. ChatGPT. Go to project settings in the left-hand panel, navigate to the engine section and click on input. Well, here's engine and here's input. Okay. Click on the plus button next to the action mappings or axis mappings to add a new input. Okay, where do I see that? Oh yeah, action mappings, plus. Oh yeah. Enter a name, so in this case, we're gonna call it sprint. Assign a key or button to the input by clicking the plus button next to the keys field. Well, I don't see that. It does see, using critical thinking though, if I look, there's stuff here. So let's go keyboard. Well, this looks like us. Okay. What if I just type in the word shift? Left shift? Okay. I do love that though, because my instinct is exactly the same. ChatGPT is like, make sure you save it, but in the Unreal Engine, you can't actually save in the project settings, which drives me insane, but whatever. Okay, so we've made it. Let's head back to our first person character and continue with these steps. In your character blueprint, add a new event for the sprint input action, which Luckily, we've done something like that before. If I type in sprint, we'll check it out. Here it is. It's red, which is an action, so we know that. Add a new branch node to your character movement blueprint that checks if the is sprinting variable is true. My character movement blueprint. Well, here's character movement, but that didn't do anything. What if I double click it? Well, that just brought me back to the viewport. I guess we could just do it here. Maybe it means just in the event graph. So we're gonna try that. We're gonna create a branch, and I guess we plug it into the sprint. And the condition will be the is sprinting boolean that we created. I really don't think this works the way that ChatGPT thinks it works. I don't know that we can do this. Oof, come on ChatGPT, you gotta do better than this. So here's where we have to come across a dilemma that we'll have to solve for this series. Do I now poke and prod at ChatGPT until it gives me the correct answer? Or do I take over as the developer and do it my own way? I think for this specific episode, I'm gonna do it my own way. However, if you guys are interested in seeing how ChatGPT resolves these issues if we continue to poke and prod, I will do that. Maybe this episode I'll do me. Next episode, I'll make ChatGPT have to give me the answers. I think it's still good to look at its answers and really take in just how right and wrong it can be. But in order for this to work, we would literally need, so if we type in the word tick, we would literally need an event tick that constantly runs an event that checks to see if is sprinting is held down, which is super unnecessary. So instead of that, because that's absolute nonsense, I'm gonna delete this variable and I'm just gonna pull our character movement onto the event graph. And instead of doing the nonsense it wanted me to do, what we're gonna do is we're going to set the max walk speed whenever the button is pressed. We'll make this look nice, don't worry. So when the button is pressed, we'll set the max walk speed faster than our normal walk speed. So currently our walk speed is 600 centimeters a second. So when we're sprinting, we'll set it to like 800. Now, honestly, for a horror game, by the way, these numbers are very high. I know that from experience. But for now, we'll just set them as if we don't know what we're doing. So then what we'll do is we'll set the max walk speed back to, what is it, 600 by default, I believe. Yeah, we'll set this back to 600 when we release the button. So to me, this makes a hell of a lot more sense than, oh, whoa. So to me, this makes a hell of a lot more sense than what it was trying to do. So if we head back over to our actual game, we're running, now we're holding shift, now we're not, shift, not, shift, not. So now we have a little bit of a sprint system. I believe it wanted us to add a stamina system. To prevent sprinting for an extended period of time, you can also add a stamina system. Okay, let's go ahead and check what it wants us to do for the stamina system. How do I implement the stamina system for my sprint? Create a new variable in your player character's blueprint to track the player's stamina. The variable should be a float that starts at the maximum value. So they actually give us some pretty good info this time. So let's go ahead and do that. We're gonna call this stamina. We're gonna make that a float, and it said that its starting value needs to be the maximum, which in this case, we'll just do 100 because it's a nice round number. Create a new Boolean variable in your character's blueprint to check whether or not the character is sprinting. Yes, actually, this should be fine. So we'll go ahead and bring the is sprinting back. And the reason we're actually gonna do it this way is because in this case, I actually do wanna run this off of the event tick, but we'll probably use delta time. Maybe, we'll see, because I have to have ChatGPT tell me about delta time. We'll see. Good new input action for sprinting. We already got that. Set up your code to decrease the stamina variable over time while the player is sprinting. You can do this by setting up a loop to decrements the stamina variable by a certain amount each frame while the sprinting boolean is true. If the stamina variable reaches 0, disable sprinting and prevent the player from sprinting until their stamina is fully recharged. You can do this by checking the stamina variable each time the sprint input is pressed and only allow sprinting if the stamina is greater than 0. Yeah, we can do that. However, how did it want us to do it? It wants us to do it with a loop, which is interesting. Can't say I've ever done it with a loop before. So we're going to create a custom event. I know it didn't specifically say custom event, but I think that's what it's getting at. And we're going to do decrease stamina. And it says to do it with a loop. It says set up your sprinting code to decrease the stamina variable over time while the player is sprinting. You can do this by setting up a loop. It does specifically say loop. So a for loop, while loop works. Oh, true. Okay. I don't know how this works. Does the while loop have to be called again to stop? We'll find out. If this works, I'll have learned something, which is cool. I've never used a while loop in Blueprint before. I've used it in other stuff, like actual coding, but never in Blueprint. So we're gonna get stamina. We are going to just say greater than equal to 1 and plug it in. So if this is right, I guess we have to check 2 things. No, we're doing this wrong. We need to plug in the stamina, or no, the is sprinting here. And then change this variable once it hits 0. So if is sprinting is true, the loop body needs to be the actual decreasing of the stamina. But before we decrease it, we need to double check that we're not less than or equal to 1. So then we need a branch. So every time it loops, it needs to say, okay, is my stamina greater or equal than 1? If it is, we need to decrease our stamina. So we will do get stamina. We'll do minus or subtract. And we'll do like 0.1 because if this is for each frame, this is gonna fly by. So we're gonna have to really pay attention to how quick this is going. What I'll probably do is add like a delay or something so that way this doesn't do it every frame, which is why I thought we would use the tick with delta time, but whatever. So we've got stamina, we're gonna subtract 0.1 per frame, and then we're going to set it. So set that to our new stamina. If false, what we need to do is set is sprinting. So we're gonna set is sprinting to false and immediately change our character movement back to 600. So copy, paste, plug this in. This is very dirty code, by the way, but I'm learning as I go because I've never done it this way. So excuse my dirty code. But we're gonna decrease stamina with a while loop of is sprinting. So while is sprinting is true, what we're going to do is make sure our stamina is above 1, or in this case, technically above 0. If it is, we are going to subtract 0.1 every frame and set that to the new stamina. If not, what we're going to do is set is sprinting to false. I don't know why I said true, but set it to false, and then change our character movement back to 600. So what I want to do is track our stamina. So in order to track our stamina, we're going to do a print string. Otherwise, we're just kind of eyeballing if it's actually working or not, and I'd rather have more of a solid way of checking. So what we're gonna do is just put our stamina into the end string, and now every frame that we're running, it'll update our stamina on screen at the top left. So it's not doing anything. This is why I was scared to use a while loop. I've never used one. I'm still sprinting. You know what the problem is? I'm a doofus. We're never calling this code. So on the pressed, whenever we go faster, we need to decrease stamina to even call this code. I'm just a doofus. There we go. Let's do that again. Nothing is happening still. I'm still running really fast. I don't think stamina is decreasing, and it's not printing string. Interesting. I'm a doofus again. We need to set the is sprinting to true. And then obviously we need to set the is sprinting to false here. To clean up this code, by the way, we'll do that last. For now, let's just get this working. Okay. Sprint, there we go. And look how fast it hit 0, by the way. Did you see that? Did you even see anything? Like, it was so fast. I can't, and it's never going back up because it's never told to refresh. So it hit 0. Did you see how fast it went? That is why doing this loop body doesn't really make sense. So instead what we'll do is we'll decrease their stamina with a delay. So by adding the delay, essentially what I'm doing is saying, hey, you can only pass this line of code every so often. And what we're gonna do is make it so it can only pass this line of code we'll do every half a second. So that way every half a second it's rechecking the stamina, right? It's like, are you running? Are you running? Are you running? Are you running? Is it perfect? No. And it's not gonna be super fresh either, but this is just a simple way to slow it down for the time being. However, since it's every half a second, we need to increase how much it's reducing each time. Because as of right now, it'd be 0.1 stamina every half a second. That'd be a very long sprint. So let's say we wanted them to be able to sprint for 5 seconds. That means that, hold on, I can do this. We have 100 stamina and it needs to decrease 10 times. So 200 stamina, it needs to decrease 10 times. So set this to 10 and now we can sprint for 5 seconds. Math on the fly, guys. It's very helpful. All right, let's see if that worked. So now we should get, oh my God, infinite loop detected. So I think the reason we got the infinite loop is because this while loop is always true while we're sprinting, but then we hit a delay. So it's running this code every single frame, which is creating an infinite loop. Man, ChatGPT actually might not be the best way to do every step of your project is what I'm learning, but I still am fully committed to this idea, don't worry. Okay, sorry for the weird cut. I had to go to work, but I'm back now. And I think what I've decided is I kind of want to scrap this and do it how you're supposed to do it, and maybe change ChatGPT's control on the entire situation, because I think it's proving to not be that good at giving the specifics. So I'm essentially just gonna literally delete all of this, okay? And we're gonna do it the correct way and not the weird way. So I'm gonna create a custom event. We're just gonna call it start sprint, not start print, but start sprint. We're gonna create another custom event and we're gonna call it end sprint. The pressed is going to call the start sprint. The released is going to call the end sprint. And this is already a significantly better way to go about this. The start sprint is going to set the is sprinting to true. The end sprint, of course, is going to set it to false. Then under all this, I'm going to do an event tick and create a variable that's going to be a float just called wait time, or like a delay time, something like that. We'll go with the wait time. And essentially what we're gonna do is I'm actually going to create a function that is gonna slow our event tick down so it's not happening on every single frame. So I'm gonna go ahead and pop open our functions here. I'm gonna call this the wait function, I guess. It doesn't really matter. I'm going to make sure it has an output, and the parameter is gonna be a Boolean, and we're gonna name the Boolean, just like continue with a question mark. And then we're going to separate these two nodes. And in fact, we actually also need an input, which is going to be the delta time from the event tick. And now what we do is we take the wait, we get the wait time. The first thing we do is we check and see if it is equal to the amount of time that we want to wait. So in this example, we'll do the 0.5 and continue to do the system like that. And we'll do that like that. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to take the delta time and we are going to add it to the wait time. And what we'll do then is see if that new time is equal or greater, just in case it accidentally goes over. So we'll do greater than equal to the 0.5 seconds that we want to wait and plug that into a branch. If it isn't, then what we need to do is we need to set the wait time to this new number. We're going to make continue a Boolean, so we're going to promote that to a variable, and we will set continue to false if it is false, and then we will plug it into the return node. And if it is greater than or equal to the 0.5, we will actually set the wait time back to 0, set continue to true, and also go to the return node. I'm going to save and compile that because now we have a nice little thing here to keep track of the wait time, so that way the the event tick isn't every single frame, which is going to be very difficult for us to measure our stamina with. So instead, what we're going to do is we're going to now pull out the function and we're going to plug in the event tick to it. So now what's going to happen is it will only run this wait function every single frame, because what delta time does is gives you passing time instead of frame time. And it will only go further if it waits the full 0.5 seconds. So if it does get past that, then what we're going to do is we're simply going to check and see if we are sprinting. So we are going to get the is sprinting, and we're going to get a second branch. And so we only want this to go if it's true. And if it is true, we'll then check if we're sprinting. And now we'll create a custom event to reduce stamina as one word, not two. It will require an input of a float, and we'll just say decrease amount, and we will just right click that and promote it to a variable. I'll even make it public so we can actually call it or set it from outside of the blueprint. And it's pretty much this simple. We get our stamina and we want to subtract the decrease amount. Then we need to run a check to make sure that it is not less than or equal to 0, because if it is, then we immediately need to set the is sprinting. So we're going to set it to false. But of course, that will only be if less than or equal is true. So we'll pull this up, we'll plug it in for the true. If it's not less than or equal to 0, then we can keep going and everything is fine. So we don't really need to plug anything in there. So let's see what we got going on. If we start sprinting, we set sprinting to true. If we end sprint, we set it to false. And then what we need to do is actually get our character movement and set the actual max walk speed. So we're going to set the max walk speed to, it's a sprint, so 800. And if we are not sprinting, we will set the max walk speed to something like 600. Now, of course, I always like to do comments. So we're going to comment this out and say input action sprint, because there's not really a lot to describe on that one, but we still want to know what it is. And I just realized we also need to do this. So is sprinting is true, we need to run a reduce stamina. So reduce stamina if we are indeed sprinting on the event tick. That's not what I wanted. Every half a second, reduce stamina by 10 if we're sprinting, which, by the way, let's go ahead and set this decrease amount to 10. Which, by the way, I've actually never done it like this before. So you know how I went here and I right clicked and hit promote to variable? I don't know if this actually is connected to this now. So we'll find out. And we'll grab the last one. Reduce stamina when we're not sprinting. So the next thing we need to do actually is we need to create one more function because we need to be able to regenerate our stamina. So reduce stamina and gain stamina. Same thing. Instead of a decrease amount, we're going to hit plus. We need a float and we need an increase amount instead. We're going to promote that to a variable. Like right there, because it says set. I don't know if it's actually making it a variable or not. We'll see. Save and compile. And the increase amount, we'll just leave it about the same speed as the decrease amount. And now all we need to do really is pull this down. We need a little space up here under the event tick that we created. Because under the is sprinting, this branch, we're going to set this to instead gain stamina. But of course we only want to gain stamina if you know what, we can just do this. I just realized that the functions that we're calling, we can literally just plug these in. There we go. And now it'll work because every time we call it, it's going to be through here, so that'll work. Anyway, we only want to gain stamina if we're equal to or less than, yeah, so just less than 100. We don't want it to be any more than that. So let's go ahead and set that up. Let's go ahead and take our stamina. Let us do it a little backwards from the reduce. Instead, we're going to check immediately. We're going to just say, is our current stamina less than 100? Oh, that's 1,000. 100. We'll take the increase amount and we'll put it right there. Actually, wait, what am I talking about? We don't need to plug that in there. We just need to check the 100. If it is less than 100, then we need to do an increase. So what we're going to do is take our stamina. We are going to add to it. Let's bring this up a little bit and bring this up so this line has a little bit better of a path to travel to get to the node. So something like that. And then of course, after we add the increase amount to the stamina, we then need to set our stamina to something like that. So there we go. If our stamina is less than 100, we take our stamina, we add the increase amount to it and set our stamina with that new value. If it is less, or if it's not less than 100, we don't want to do anything. So we'll go ahead and grab that and type in gain stamina when we're not sprinting. So now we've kind of got it clamped between 0 and 100. However, if you look, whenever we run out of stamina, I just turn off the is sprinting. So instead of doing that, I'm actually just going to run the end sprint. So we're going to go over here. We're going to type in end sprint. So that way our code actually functions the way that it's supposed to. So when it ends sprint, it'll make this false and it'll set us to the correct speed. And at the end of the day, what I want to do is make sure we are seeing how much stamina we have. So at the very end of the event tick, what I'm going to do is do a print string like this, and we're going to plug both these bad boys in, and we're just going to plug our stamina straight into the end string. And now basically on event tick, event tick with the wait time, we are going to get the update on what our stamina is. So let's go ahead and take a look. When we hit play, we should be getting 100, 100, 100, 100. Let's go ahead and start sprinting. Notice that it's not doing anything. We're staying at 100, so something is incorrect. Let's go check it out. And I just found it. Notice that we never actually set stamina after doing the decrease and then the check. So basically what we're going to do here is we're actually just going to pull all this over like that. We're going to disconnect this. We're going to disconnect this. And we're just going to hit stamina. We're going to go over here and we're going to set it to the new value, which makes way more sense than whatever it is I was doing originally. We're going to plug that into the less than equal to, which of course is going to check and see if we have any at all. And then based on that answer, it will end the sprint or let you keep going. So now it should be working. That's my bad. 100, 100, 100. Let's start sprinting. Now we're 90, 80, 70, 60, 50, 40, 30, 20, 10. And there you go. We have officially stopped sprinting. And as you can see, it's going back up. We start sprinting and it's starting to go back breakdown. So let me know what you guys think. ChatGPT is kind of failing us on the actual specifics of the Unreal Engine, which is a little unfortunate for brand new people. Of course, you could still understand its concepts and potentially poke and prod at it to get better answers. But what do you guys like? Do you like me actually going in and showing you exactly how to get it done? Or do you want me to keep poking and prodding ChatGPT, which is sort of the focus of the video to begin with? But I'm going to leave it up to you guys, which means it's important for you guys to leave comments on this one. Not just for my algorithm's sake, but in general, I'd like to know where you want this series to go. So like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next episode.